Rejected by her own kind, she asked a human, "Will you marry me?" Liara looked out across the pale lavender skies of Elythra, her eyes tracing the gentle curves of the floating cities that hung like delicate jewels over the planet's surface. She had always loved this view, the calmness it brought, the sense that the universe was vast yet familiar. But today, the sky felt heavy. Her heart carried a weight that no beauty could lift. For centuries, her family had held a prestigious place in Elythran society, guiding science, politics, and culture. And yet, Liara, brilliant in every way, had been rejected by her own kind. It had not been a minor dismissal or a casual disagreement. The council, the ruling body of Elythra, had officially deemed her unsuitable to inherit her family's place among the elite. Her ideas, once celebrated for their creativity, were now considered dangerous. She believed in understanding, in reaching beyond the limits of their traditions, in seeing value where others refused to look. But in a society that prized conformity above all, that was a crime. Liara turned away from the window and let her gaze wander over her laboratory. It was her sanctuary, filled with softly humming machines, glowing screens, and carefully arranged instruments. Her work had always been a way to connect with the universe, a way to find meaning when social acceptance had failed her. But even the hum of the machines could not chase away the loneliness she felt now. She had been a child of promise. From a young age, her intelligence had been unmatched. She had solved problems that had puzzled entire teams of Elythran scientists for decades. Her innovations in energy and communication had the potential to change not only their planet but the entire star system. Yet, instead of being praised, she had been cast aside. The council had called her ideas reckless, her compassion naive, and her willingness to explore beyond their borders a threat to tradition. For days after the verdict, Liara wandered the empty halls of her family's estate, trying to understand how brilliance could be punished. Her family had been quiet, avoiding her gaze. The weight of silence can be heavier than harsh words, and she felt the sting of isolation more sharply than any insult. For the first time in her life, Liara wondered if her curiosity, her kindness, and her refusal to accept limits had been mistakes. It was during one of these long walks that she found herself in the observatory, a place she had always loved for its endless view of the stars. As she peered through the telescope, her eyes fell on a small blue planet in the distance, circling a modest sun. She had seen it before, countless times, but today it seemed different. The planet pulsed with life, glowing in ways her instruments could not fully explain. Curiosity flared within her, a spark she could not ignore. She knew of the humans, a species that had only recently begun to explore interstellar space. They were young, untamed, unpredictable, and deeply emotional. They valued freedom, creativity, and connection in ways Elythrans had long forgotten. Where her own kind feared difference, humans embraced it. Where her society prized perfection and logic, humans allowed imperfection and emotion to guide them. Liara's fascination grew into obsession. She began to study them in secret, monitoring their communications, observing their colonies, and learning their languages. Each discovery filled her with awe. Humans laughed in ways that made her sensors record emotional spikes she could not quantify. They worked together in ways that prioritized empathy over efficiency. They built art, music, and stories simply because they felt it was meaningful, not because it served a purpose. For the first time in years, Liara felt something she had not felt since childhood: hope. Not the cautious hope she had held for recognition or acceptance among her own kind, but the wild, unpredictable hope of connection. Perhaps, she thought, if she could understand these humans, she could find a place in the universe where her curiosity and compassion were not punished. But fascination alone was not enough. Liara knew she had to see them up close, to experience their world directly. Her plans were careful, precise. She disguised her form using the advanced technology she had developed, allowing her to appear human. Every detail was calculated: skin tone, hair texture, eye color, even the subtle rhythms of movement that made humans so distinct. She could not risk being recognized as an alien. Not yet. Not until she understood what it meant to truly be among them. When she finally arrived on the planet Novara, she was overwhelmed by its beauty. The air was fresh, tinged with scents that had no equivalent on Elythra. The sky was a brilliant blue, dotted with clouds that moved in patterns too fluid and random for her sensors to predict. She walked among the humans, hiding her alien nature behind the guise of human form, listening, observing, learning. It was in a small workshop, tucked away on the edge of the colony, that she met Ethan. He was repairing a mechanical device, his hands deftly moving over wires and circuits. He glanced up and smiled at her, a simple gesture, yet one that carried warmth and openness she had never experienced among her own kind. "Need a hand?" he asked, his voice friendly, curious, without a hint of judgment. Liara hesitated for a moment. She was used to skepticism, to politeness laced with suspicion, to eyes that judged every action. But here, in this moment, she felt something unfamiliar. She nodded. "I think I can use some help," she said, her voice steady even as her heart raced. Together, they worked on the device, and Liara discovered a rhythm in their collaboration. It was effortless, natural, unlike the rigid precision she was used to in Elithran teamwork. Ethan asked questions, genuinely curious, and she answered with honesty, careful not to reveal her true identity. And yet she found herself laughing at his jokes, smiling at his easy kindness, feeling the first stirrings of connection in her heart. Days turned into weeks, and Liara continued to observe and learn from humans. She marveled at their resilience, their creativity, and the way they cared for one another. But as her fascination grew, so did a more complex feeling, something she had only read about in ancient Elithran texts but had never truly understood: love. She found herself drawn to Ethan not just for his intelligence or kindness, but for his capacity to see and understand. He treated her as an equal, listened to her ideas, and respected her thoughts. With humans, she realized, it was possible to share emotions without fear, without the strict rules and judgments that had defined her life on Elithra. Yet even as she allowed herself to feel, Liara knew the dangers. Her people would never understand, never accept this bond. If they discovered her, the consequences could be severe. But the thought of abandoning this connection, of returning to the cold halls of her family estate, filled her with dread. For the first time, she understood the human concept of risk, not for survival, but for love. One evening, as the twin moons of Nova arose in the sky, casting silver light over the colony, Liara watched Ethan laugh with his friends. She felt a pang of longing, a mixture of joy and sorrow. She was part of their world now, yet still separate, still an observer in many ways. She knew that to truly belong, she would have to make a choice that would defy her society, her family, and everything she had been taught. But Liara no longer feared the unknown. She had discovered a world that valued emotion, courage, and connection. And for the first time in her life, she believed that she could find a place where her heart, her curiosity, and her very being were not only accepted but celebrated. As she turned away from the window of her hidden quarters, her mind racing with possibilities, she made a silent promise to herself. She would explore this world fully. She would learn from these humans, understand their ways, and perhaps, in time, reveal herself to Ethan. And maybe, just maybe, she would find a love that could bridge the vast expanse between stars, between species, and between worlds. Liara did not know what the future held. She did not know the challenges, the dangers, or the moments of doubt she would face. But she knew one thing: she would no longer be defined by rejection or fear. She had chosen curiosity, hope, and connection. And in that choice, she had already begun to change, not just her own life, but the possibilities for the universe itself. And somewhere in the quiet hum of her instruments and the soft glow of Novara's moons, Liara felt the first real sense of belonging she had ever known. Liara had spent weeks observing humans from a distance, learning their ways, understanding the rhythms of their daily lives. Yet no amount of observation could have prepared her for the experience of being among them, fully present in their world. Every detail fascinated her: the softness of their voices, the way their expressions changed with emotion, the laughter that seemed to fill the air with warmth. She had always thought herself capable of understanding everything through logic and calculation, but humans were something else entirely. They could not be fully understood by measurement or analysis. They had a spark, a kind of unpredictability that made them both confusing and captivating. She had chosen to reveal herself slowly, carefully, using the disguise she had perfected over months. Her human form blended seamlessly among the settlers, yet there were moments when her alien instincts peeked through. Her reactions were sometimes too precise, too perfect, her eyes sometimes lingering too long on details humans overlooked. But so far, no one had suspected. Not until she met Ethan. He was in the small workshop she had chosen as her first place to interact openly. He worked on repairing a malfunctioning energy converter, tools spread around him in a haphazard but purposeful way. His brow furrowed as he examined a wire, muttering softly under his breath. Liara felt a strange pull toward him. It was more than curiosity, it was something deeper, something she had never experienced before among her own kind. "Excuse me," she said softly, stepping closer, careful not to startle him. "Do you need help with that?" Ethan looked up, his expression shifting from concentration to curiosity. "Oh, sure," he said, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "I think I've got it mostly figured out, but an extra pair of hands wouldn't hurt." Liara knelt beside him, examining the device. Her sensors registered the delicate balance of components, the careful way he adjusted the wires. It was fascinating, not just the machine itself, but the human approach to problem solving. Humans did not always follow a single logical path. They tried, failed, adapted, and tried again. There was creativity in their persistence, and artistry in their mistakes. As they worked side by side, Liara found herself speaking more than she had intended. She described principles of energy flow, suggested adjustments, and offered insights that even Ethan had not considered. To her surprise, he listened intently, nodding and asking questions, genuinely interested. There was no condescension, no dismissal. This simple act of listening, of valuing her input, touched her in ways words could not capture. "You really know your stuff," Ethan said, his smile wide and open. "Where did you learn all this?" Liara hesitated. She could not tell him she was an alien from another world, it would be too dangerous. But she also could not lie completely. "I've studied a lot," she said vaguely. "A lot of reading, a lot of experimenting. I've always loved figuring out how things work." Ethan laughed softly. "Sounds like me. I've always liked fixing things, understanding how they tick, but you think differently, in a good way." Liara felt warmth spread through her chest. Compliments from humans were different from praise among Elithrans. They carried sincerity, emotion, connection. She wanted to tell him more, to share everything, but the fear of being discovered held her back. Over the following days, Liara continued to work with Ethan. They repaired equipment, built new devices, and shared long discussions about their approaches. She learned more about humans in a week than she had in years of observation. She learned about their celebrations, their fears, their hopes. She discovered that they valued kindness and empathy as much as intelligence and skill. They could forgive mistakes, appreciate effort, and see beauty in imperfection. One afternoon, as they walked through the colony gardens to collect supplies, Ethan stopped and turned to her. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "you're different from anyone I've ever met, not just in how you think, but everything about you. I can't explain it. You're unique." Liara felt her chest tighten. She had expected suspicion, caution, maybe even fear if he realized she was not human. Instead, he was simply curious, accepting her without question. She wanted to respond honestly, to tell him the truth, but she forced herself to speak carefully. "I suppose we're all unique in our own ways," she said, a faint smile forming. Ethan nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer, but his eyes lingered on her. Liara felt a strange thrill at that gaze. It was the first time she had felt truly seen, not for her abilities or her appearance, but for her being. As their friendship deepened, Liara began to experience emotions she had never known among her own kind. She felt excitement when she anticipated meeting him, relief when he smiled, and longing when he was not near. These were not the sterile calculations of Elithran's social metrics. They were raw, unpredictable, and wonderful. She had read about love in ancient texts, studied the emotional responses humans described, but now she was living it. Her growing attachment did not go unnoticed by others in the colony. A few of the humans whispered about her curiosity and intelligence, admiring her quick mind. But there were no judgments, no ridicule. She realized that humans could accept someone for their differences rather than fearing them. This was a revelation that both thrilled and frightened her. One evening, while Ethan worked late in the workshop, Liara lingered nearby, quietly observing him. He hummed a tune she did not recognize, moving with ease and confidence. She felt a sudden, sharp desire to reach out, to touch him, to connect in a way she had never dared with her own kind. But she restrained herself. She was still a stranger here, still learning, and the consequences of revealing too much too soon could be disastrous. Instead, she focused on helping him, passing him tools, offering suggestions, and watching his reactions. Every small smile, every nod of appreciation, Every glance of acknowledgement filled her with warmth. She realized that her heart, so long confined by rejection and isolation, was opening in ways she had never imagined possible. As days turned into weeks, Liara and Ethan began to share more than just work. They talked about dreams, about curiosity, about the stars. Ethan told her stories of human explorers, of families that had journeyed across planets, of traditions that celebrated both achievement and emotion. Liara shared observations of the universe, theories she had developed, questions about life that humans had never considered. Each conversation built a bridge between them, connecting two beings from entirely different worlds in ways neither had anticipated. But Liara could not ignore the dangers. She knew that her people, observing from afar, might detect her presence. Her research on human communication had revealed that the Elithrans were capable of monitoring energy signatures and unusual technology from great distances. If they discovered that she had integrated herself into a human colony, the consequences could be severe. She might be forced to leave, to hide, or even face punishment. Yet despite the risk, she felt a growing determination. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they were also brave, empathetic, and capable of love in ways Elithrans had long abandoned. She realized that she was learning something far more valuable than technology or scientific principles. She was learning about trust, companionship, and the courage to follow one's heart. One afternoon, Ethan brought her to a quiet hillside overlooking the colony. The wind rustled the grass, carrying the scent of blossoms, and the twin moons of Novara hung low in the sky, casting silver light across the land. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said softly, gazing out at the horizon. Liara nodded, her eyes taking in the scene. "It is," she said. For a moment she allowed herself to forget the fear, the secrets, and the risks. She simply existed in that space, in that moment with him. Ethan turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "You know, I feel like I can tell you anything. Like you actually understand." Liara's heart skipped. She wanted to tell him everything, the truth of who she was, the world she came from, the reasons she had come to Novara. But she stayed silent, nodding instead. "I'm glad you feel that way," she said. He smiled, and she felt a warmth unlike anything she had experienced. It was not just admiration or respect. It was connection, a bond that transcended words. She realized then that this bond was worth the risk, worth the fear, worth the uncertainty of what lay ahead. As they walked back to the colony, Liara's mind raced with possibilities. She imagined a future where she could reveal herself, where humans and Elithrans might understand each other better, where love could exist even across the boundaries of species. It seemed impossible, yet the very impossibility made it thrilling. For the first time in her life, she did not feel confined by rules or expectations. She felt free. Liara knew that challenges lay ahead, alien authorities, cultural prejudices, and the unknown reactions of humans to her true identity. But for now, she chose to focus on the present. She chose to explore this new world, to deepen her bond with Ethan, and to embrace the feelings she had long denied herself. As night fell and the stars of Novara shone brightly, Liara sat quietly in her quarters, reflecting on the day. She thought of Ethan's laughter, his kindness, his curiosity. She thought of the humans she had met, their warmth, their openness, their capacity for love. And she felt a sense of hope she had never known on Elithra, hope that she could belong, hope that she could love. Hope that the universe, in all its vastness, might have a place for her heart. And somewhere deep within, Liara understood that this was only the beginning. The beginning of a journey that would challenge everything she had known, everything she had been taught, and everything she had believed about connection, trust, and love. Liara had now been living among humans for several months. Each day brought new lessons, new experiences, and new challenges. She had come to appreciate not only their skills and creativity, but also their warmth and unpredictability. Every conversation with Ethan seemed to reveal a new layer of understanding, not just of humans, but of herself. Yet, as much as she loved the moments she shared with him, a growing tension weighed on her. She had begun to realize that blending in as a human was not as simple as she had first imagined. Small things betrayed her alien nature. The precision in her movements, the way her eyes lingered too long on details, and the faint hum of her internal sensors that sometimes escaped her control. Most humans did not notice these subtleties, but occasionally someone would pause, frown, or comment on her peculiar habits. She had learned to laugh them off, but deep down, She knew that her secret could not remain hidden forever. Ethan, however, seemed unfazed. He treated her with the same respect and curiosity as always, never questioning her abilities or her behavior. He laughed at her jokes, listened to her ideas, and included her in conversations as though she had always belonged. Liara cherished these moments, and yet she could not shake the sense of impending risk. One morning, while helping Ethan repair a broken solar panel on the outskirts of the colony, Liara's fears became more immediate. A sudden tremor of energy rippled through her sensors, a faint but unmistakable trace of monitoring from Elythran technology. She froze, her hands hovering over the panel. Ethan noticed her pause. "Are you okay?" he asked, tilting his head. Liara forced a smile. "Yes, just thinking," she said, her voice steady despite the alarm bells ringing in her mind. She knew that any detection of her alien signature could alert her people to her presence. Panic rose, but she had trained herself to remain calm, to act naturally. She finished the repairs with careful precision, all the while monitoring the energy traces. They faded after a few minutes, leaving her shaken but unharmed. That evening, as she reflected on the day, Liara realized the truth. She could not hide forever. Her presence among humans, her growing bond with Ethan, and her very nature were all at risk of exposure. Yet she also understood something else. The humans were different from her own kind. They would not automatically reject her. They might even accept her, as Ethan had already shown by his openness and curiosity. The challenge was not whether humans could accept her, it was whether she could trust them enough to reveal the truth. Trust had never come easily to Liara. On Elythra, suspicion and judgment were constants, and vulnerability was a weakness to be avoided. But humans taught her differently. They showed her that vulnerability could be strength, that openness could build connection, and that love could be a force more powerful than fear. Over the next few days, Liara tested the boundaries of trust. She shared small truths about herself, her love of music, her fascination with the stars, her unconventional ideas about science and culture. Each revelation was met with understanding, encouragement, and even admiration. She began to feel a growing confidence that perhaps Ethan, and humans in general, could handle the truth. Ethan, too, began to share more about himself. He spoke of his childhood on Novara, of his parents' struggles and triumphs, and of his dreams for the future. Liara listened, fascinated by his resilience and optimism. He had faced hardship, uncertainty, and loss, yet he approached life with curiosity and kindness. In many ways, he was the embodiment of everything Elythrans had lost: emotional depth, courage, and the ability to find joy in imperfection. One evening, as the twin moons of Novara cast a silver glow over the colony, Ethan and Liara sat on a hillside overlooking the settlement. The wind rustled through the grass, carrying the scent of blossoms and the distant hum of machinery. Ethan turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he said softly, "I feel like you understand things in ways I never could have imagined. Sometimes I feel like you see the world differently, and I like it. I like seeing it through your eyes." Liara's chest tightened. His words were sincere, unguarded, and full of warmth. She wanted to tell him the truth, to reveal herself completely, but fear held her back. The consequences of exposure were uncertain. Elythran authorities could come for her, or the humans might react with fear and rejection. Yet she could not ignore the longing in her heart, the desire for connection, and the sense that Ethan's acceptance might be genuine. Days passed, and the tension of secrecy grew. Liara found herself hesitating before every word, every gesture. She wanted to be honest, but the risk was ever present. Meanwhile, her bond with Ethan deepened in ways that surprised her. They shared laughter, frustration, and triumphs, discovering a rhythm in their interactions that was both comforting and exhilarating. She had never experienced such a connection before. One afternoon, while Ethan was repairing a malfunctioning water filter, Liara made a decision. She would reveal a small part of her true self, a controlled experiment to gauge his reaction. She allowed her eyes to glow faintly, a subtle signal of her alien physiology. It was barely noticeable, a shimmer in the color of her irises that only a keen observer might detect. Ethan paused mid-repair, staring at her with curiosity. "That's unusual," he said, his voice calm, not alarmed. "Is that part of how you see things?" Liara nodded, her heart pounding. "Yes, it's part of who I am," she admitted, keeping her form otherwise human. "There are things about me that are different." Ethan's reaction was nothing like what she had feared. He studied her, his eyes thoughtful, and then smiled. "Different doesn't mean bad," he said gently. "If anything, it makes you more interesting. I like learning about it. I want to understand." Relief and joy surged through Liara. She had feared rejection, but instead found curiosity and acceptance. It was a small step, yet it marked a turning point. She realized that humans were capable of understanding beyond the limits of logic, beyond the fear of difference. Their capacity for empathy was remarkable, and Ethan embodied it perfectly. Encouraged by his response, Liara began to explore other aspects of her alien nature in his presence, carefully revealing abilities that were unusual but harmless. She shared knowledge of energy patterns, star formations, and concepts of time that humans had never considered. Ethan listened, fascinated, asking questions, challenging ideas, and celebrating her insights. Each interaction strengthened their bond, building trust that neither had anticipated. Yet as their connection grew, so did the risks. Reports of unusual energy readings reached the Human Council, and a few settlers began to notice anomalies around Liara. Whispers spread, and while most were curious rather than fearful, the possibility of exposure was becoming real. Liara knew that she could not remain hidden forever. Her secret was a delicate thread, and any misstep could unravel everything. Despite these dangers, Liara and Ethan continued to work together, their partnership deepening in both friendship and affection. They repaired and improved colony infrastructure, explored new scientific ideas, and shared long conversations under the stars. Liara taught Ethan about celestial mechanics and advanced energy systems, while he taught her about human emotions, art, and storytelling. Each day, they learned from each other, bridging the gap between their worlds in ways neither had imagined. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat by a small stream on the outskirts of the colony. The water reflected the light of the moons, creating a shimmering path that seemed to stretch into infinity. Ethan tossed a small pebble into the water, watching the ripples spread. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I never thought I'd meet someone like you. Someone who makes me see things differently, who challenges me, teaches me, and makes me feel things I didn't know I could feel." Liara's heart raced. She wanted to tell him everything, but she knew that full honesty would have to wait until she could ensure safety and understanding. Instead, she simply smiled. "I feel the same," she said softly. "You've shown me a side of life I never knew existed. You've shown me connection, trust, and hope." Ethan reached out, taking her hand gently. The touch was electric, not in a literal sense, but in the way it resonated deep within her. She had felt many emotions on Elethra, but this warmth, this acceptance, was new. It was real, and it was human. For the first time in her life, Liara allowed herself to imagine a future where she could belong. A future where she could love without fear, where her differences would be celebrated rather than condemned, and where she could explore both the universe and the depths of her heart without restraint. And yet, she knew that the path ahead would not be easy. Cultural barriers, societal expectations, and the unknown reactions of both humans and Elethrans loomed like distant storms. But for now, she chose to focus on the present, on the bond she shared with Ethan, and on the possibilities that each day brought. Liara had crossed a threshold. She was no longer merely observing humans. She was living among them, learning from them, and forming connections that defied the limits of her upbringing. She had discovered courage, trust, and the first inklings of love. And she knew deep within that this journey was only beginning. The universe was vast, full of unknown dangers and wonders, yet Liara no longer felt small or powerless. She had found someone who understood, someone who accepted her, and someone who inspired her to embrace her true self. And in that connection, she had discovered something Elethra could never offer, the freedom to be herself, completely and without fear. As the moons of Novara rose higher, casting silver light across the landscape, Liara felt a quiet determination. She would continue to learn, to explore, and to grow. She would navigate the challenges ahead with courage and grace. And perhaps one day, she would reveal the full truth of who she was, not just as a companion or a friend, but as someone capable of bridging worlds and hearts alike. For now, she held Ethan's hand, letting the warmth of his presence remind her that she was not alone. She was no longer an outcast, no longer confined by rejection. She was on a path of discovery, love, and connection, one that could change everything she had ever known. And in that quiet, shimmering night, Liara allowed herself to dream of a future filled with possibilities, knowing that the bond she had formed was strong enough to carry her through whatever challenges lay ahead. Liara had begun to feel at home among humans. The days with Ethan were filled with laughter, learning, and quiet moments of companionship that she had never experienced on Elithra. Yet, a constant shadow lingered at the edge of her consciousness. She knew that her presence among humans was not without risk. Her people were vigilant, capable of tracking her energy signatures across the stars, and she had already sensed their distant attention more than once. Each detection reminded her that the safety she felt could vanish in an instant. Despite the fear, she could not bring herself to leave. Humans had shown her a side of life Elithra had long denied: empathy, love, and the courage to embrace differences. Ethan, in particular, had become her anchor. His curiosity, kindness, and openness had drawn her closer than she had ever been to anyone. Each shared smile, each gentle touch, strengthened a bond she feared she might never be able to express fully. One morning, Liara was in the workshop, assisting Ethan with the calibration of a new energy conduit, when the sky above the colony rippled with a strange, shimmering light. Her sensors immediately recognized it, a scan from her own people. Her heart raced. She had warned herself this could happen, but now that it had, fear and determination clashed within her. She could not hide forever. Ethan noticed the change in her demeanor. "Liara, are you all right?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. She forced a smile, though it felt fragile. "Yes, just thinking about the conduit," she said, trying to steady her voice. She knew she could not explain the truth, not yet, but the urge to be honest grew stronger. Hiding any longer felt like a betrayal of the trust and connection she had with Ethan. The next hours were tense. Liara worked alongside Ethan, yet her mind was elsewhere, calculating risks and possibilities. She knew that any misstep could draw the attention of Elithran authorities, but she also knew that fleeing would mean abandoning the humans she had come to care for, and more painfully, it would mean abandoning Ethan. As the day waned, Liara made a decision. She would prepare for the inevitable confrontation, but she would also take steps to protect Ethan. She began to carefully explain some of her knowledge in ways that humans could understand, subtly teaching him to recognize energy patterns and anomalous readings. She hoped that if her people arrived, Ethan would have the tools to understand and help her navigate the situation. That evening, as the twin moons of Nova arose, Liara and Ethan sat on the hillside overlooking the colony. She watched the silver light ripple across the fields, her mind racing. "Ethan," she began softly, "there is something I need to tell you, something important." He looked at her with gentle concern. "You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready for," he said. Liara took a deep breath. "I am not entirely from this world," she admitted, carefully choosing her words. "I come from another planet, from a civilization very different from humans. I disguised myself to be here to learn about your people. I did not mean to deceive you, but I had no other choice." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Ethan's eyes widened slightly, but he did not recoil. Instead, he studied her, processing the revelation. "Another planet," he said slowly. "You mean you're an alien?" Liara nodded, her heart pounding. "Yes, and I understand if this changes everything. I was afraid of what would happen if you knew, but I trust you, and I wanted to be honest before anything else happened." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out, taking her hand gently. "Liara, that doesn't change anything. I mean, yes, it's a lot to take in, but I like you. I like the person you are. I want to understand, to learn from you, and to be with you if you'll have me." Relief and joy surged through Liara. She had feared rejection, judgment, or even fear, but instead found acceptance, curiosity, and affection. It was a moment of connection she had never imagined possible. She smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "Ethan, I want that too," she said softly. The joy of the moment was interrupted by a distant hum, subtle but unmistakable. Liara's sensors picked up the approach of Elithran monitoring ships. Her heart sank. The authorities had discovered her location. The time for secrecy was over. She had to face them, and she had to decide whether to protect herself, protect Ethan, or try to do both. Ethan noticed her sudden tension. "Liara, what's happening?" "They're here," she said quietly. "My people, they've found me." Panic flared briefly, but Liara forced herself to think. She could not run, and hiding would only delay the inevitable. She had learned from humans that confrontation could be met with courage, strategy, and negotiation. Perhaps, she thought, There was a way to face her people without abandoning her newfound connection. The Elythran ships arrived above the colony, their presence imposing but not yet aggressive. Liara felt the weight of centuries of expectation and judgment pressing down on her. Her people had always valued conformity, obedience, and control. She had defied all three simply by seeking connection with humans. She knew that standing firm would require every ounce of courage she possessed. With Ethan by her side, Liara approached the nearest ship. She activated a communication channel, her voice calm and steady despite the fear in her heart. "This is Liara," she announced. "I am here willingly. I am not a threat. I wish to speak with my people." There was a pause, then the voice of the Elythran Council came through, cold and measured. "Liara, you have violated our laws and traditions. Your actions are reckless and dangerous. Return to Elythra immediately or face consequences." Liara drew a deep breath. "I will not abandon this place or the people I have come to care for," she said firmly. "I am willing to explain my actions and demonstrate that my intentions are not harmful. I ask only for understanding and the chance to show that connection, empathy, and cooperation can be valuable even across species." Her words carried more strength than she had expected. The humans watching from below sensed the tension but did not panic. Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but resolute. "Liara has done nothing wrong. She has helped this colony, shared knowledge, and built bridges between our worlds. Punishing her for seeking understanding and connection would be a mistake." The council responded with measured scrutiny. "Your attachment to humans compromises your judgment. You must return." Liara squared her shoulders. "My attachment has shown me the value of compassion, trust, and collaboration. I will not forsake these lessons. I stand by my choice to remain here, to continue learning, and to foster understanding between our species." There was silence. The council's response was delayed, as if they were considering something unexpected. Liara could feel her heart racing, the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on her. Yet, she also felt the support of the humans around her, the bond she had formed with Ethan, and the courage that had grown within her since arriving on Novara. Finally, the voice of the council spoke again, colder but slightly softened. "Your defiance is noted. We will not pursue immediate action, but you are warned. Continued interaction with humans may have consequences. Return to Elythra at your discretion, or risk isolation from your civilization permanently." Liara exhaled, a mixture of relief and determination coursing through her. She had faced the judgment of her people and survived. She had chosen the path of courage and love over fear and obedience, and she had Ethan by her side, a partner who understood, accepted, and supported her unconditionally. As the Elythran ships withdrew, Liara turned to Ethan. He smiled at her, eyes full of pride and admiration. "You were incredible," he said softly. "You stood up for yourself, for us, for what you believe in. I couldn't be more proud of you." Liara felt warmth flood through her. "I didn't do it alone," she said. "You've given me courage I didn't know I had. You've shown me trust, understanding, and love. That's what gave me strength." Ethan reached out, taking her hand gently. "Then we face the future together," he said. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it side by side." Liara smiled, feeling a sense of peace and resolve she had never known on Elythra. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, dangers, and difficult choices. But she had learned that connection, empathy, and courage could bridge even the widest divides. She had discovered that love could inspire bravery, that trust could overcome fear, and that standing firm in one's beliefs could reshape even the most rigid traditions. That night, as the moons of Novara rose high and cast silver light over the colony, Liara and Ethan sat together, hands intertwined, hearts aligned. They had faced judgment, confrontation, and uncertainty, and they had emerged stronger, more united, and more determined than ever. Liara knew that her journey was far from over. Her people might return, other challenges would arise, and the balance between worlds would continue to shift. But for the first time, she felt ready. Ready to face whatever came next, armed with courage, love, and the unwavering belief that understanding and connection could change everything. And as she gazed at Ethan, smiling in the soft moonlight, she realized something profound. She had found a home not in a place, but in a bond, not in tradition, but in trust. Not in acceptance from her people, but in the unwavering support and love of someone who saw her for who she truly was. For Liara, this was more than survival. It was a beginning. A chance to build bridges, challenge old beliefs, and discover a future where hearts and minds could come together, across worlds and across species. And in that quiet, shimmering night, she knew one truth with absolute certainty. She would never be alone again. The days after the confrontation with the Elithran Council were tense but hopeful. Liara moved through the colony with a sense of purpose she had never felt on Elithra. She had faced her own people, spoken her truth, and chosen love and connection over fear and conformity. And now, with Ethan by her side, she was determined to build a life that honored both her heart and her values. Ethan had been by her side every step of the way. He did not shy from the realities of her alien nature, nor did he treat her differently. Instead, he offered unwavering support, curiosity, and kindness. Together, they began to plan ways to strengthen the colony, improve its technology, and foster understanding between humans and, potentially, the broader Elithran civilization. Liara's knowledge of advanced energy systems and interstellar communication, combined with Ethan's practical ingenuity, created solutions that neither could have developed alone. The colony began to thrive in new ways. Solar collectors were upgraded, water filtration systems improved, and energy efficiency soared. But beyond the physical improvements, something deeper was happening. The humans began to embrace the lessons Liara shared, not only about technology, but about cooperation, empathy, and seeing value in differences. Her presence encouraged them to question rigid assumptions and appreciate that knowledge and compassion could coexist. One morning, as the twin moons of Novara cast a soft silver glow over the colony, Liara sat with Ethan by the edge of a gentle stream. She watched the water ripple over smooth stones, reflecting the light in patterns that seemed almost alive. Ethan smiled at her, a quiet, knowing smile that made her heart flutter. "I've been thinking," he said softly. "We've built so much together, but there's something missing, something more important than technology or even survival." Liara tilted her head, curiosity piqued. "And what is that?" she asked, a faint smile forming. Ethan took her hand gently, holding it as he gazed into her eyes. "We've built a life here, but I want us to build a future together, not just as partners in work, but as partners in life. Liara, will you marry me?" Liara's breath caught. Her heart raced, a surge of emotion so intense it left her momentarily speechless. She had dreamed of love, of connection, but this was more than she had ever imagined. Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear, but from overwhelming joy. She had found someone who saw her fully, accepted her completely, and loved her unconditionally. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with happiness. "Yes, Ethan, I will marry you." Ethan pulled her close, and they embraced, the bond between them solidified not just by words, but by shared experience, trust, and the courage they had shown in the face of fear. In that moment, Liara knew that she had found a home, not a place, but a connection that could withstand the vastness of space and the judgments of worlds. The news of their engagement spread through the colony, met with curiosity, admiration, and joy. Humans celebrated the union not only as a personal milestone, but as a symbol of the possibilities that arose when differences were embraced rather than feared. Liara's courage and honesty inspired others to question assumptions, to see value in diversity, and to recognize that empathy and understanding could create stronger communities. Yet, even as celebrations continued, Liara remained mindful of the wider universe. Her people had not fully accepted her choice, and the risk of further scrutiny or intervention remained. She spent long hours communicating with her homeworld, carefully explaining her actions and the value of interspecies collaboration. Her words, tempered with honesty and logic, began to sow seeds of curiosity among the Elithran Council. They had not entirely abandoned their rigid ways, but cracks were forming in their certainty. Liara also devoted herself to teaching the younger generation of humans about the stars, technology, and cooperation across differences. She encouraged curiosity, creativity, and compassion, showing them that intelligence was not solely about calculation or efficiency, but about understanding, empathy, and collaboration. Her lessons became a cornerstone of the colony's growth, fostering a community that valued not only knowledge but also heart. Ethan remained her constant companion through all of this. They worked together, laughed together, and faced challenges side by side. Their bond was built not only on love but on mutual respect, shared vision, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. They became partners in every sense, planning the future, exploring ideas, and creating a life that honored both their worlds. One evening, as the moons rose and the stars shimmered overhead, Liara and Ethan stood on a balcony overlooking the colony. The light of the moons danced across the water of the streams and lakes, reflecting the peaceful energy that had settled over the settlement. Humans moved about their daily tasks, curious, diligent, and cooperative, embodying the lessons Liara had shared. "We've come a long way," Ethan said softly, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "I never imagined any of this, not just the colony, but us." Liara leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his presence, the steady beat of his heart, and the unwavering trust in his gaze. "Neither did I," she said. "But I've learned that the universe is bigger than any rules or traditions. It's bigger than fear. It's about connection, understanding, and courage, and we found our place in it together." Ethan smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then let's keep building it, together." Liara nodded, her heart swelling with certainty. She had been an outcast, rejected by her own people for embracing curiosity and compassion. She had feared isolation, secrecy, and loss. Yet through courage, honesty, and the willingness to trust, she had found something far more valuable: love, belonging, and a future filled with possibility. The weeks turned into months. Preparations for their wedding began, bringing the community together in celebration. Humans and a few open-minded Elethran observers contributed, creating a ceremony that blended traditions, symbolizing unity, trust, and the blending of worlds. Liara marveled at how natural it felt to plan her life with Ethan, to envision a shared future where they could explore, learn, and grow together. The day of the ceremony arrived, bathed in the soft glow of Novara's twin moons. The colony gathered to witness the union, a mixture of joy, curiosity, and admiration in every face. Liara, radiant in her ceremonial attire, stood beside Ethan, who looked at her with unwavering love and pride. They exchanged vows, simple but profound, promising trust, support, and shared discovery. As they spoke, Liara thought back to the rejection she had faced on Elethra, the loneliness and isolation that had once defined her existence. And yet, in this moment, she realized that every challenge, every fear had led her to this place of belonging. She had defied rigid expectations, embraced courage, and chosen love, and the universe had responded with harmony and hope. After the ceremony, the colony celebrated with music, laughter, and dancing under the twin moons. Liara and Ethan moved among their friends, sharing stories, smiles, and quiet moments of connection. Humans marveled at her knowledge, her perspective, and her bravery. She had become not only a partner and a friend, but a symbol of what courage, curiosity, and empathy could achieve. As the celebration continued late into the night, Liara found a quiet moment with Ethan, standing together on a small hill overlooking the lights of the colony. The stars stretched endlessly above, the vastness of the universe both humbling and exhilarating. "We've done something remarkable," Ethan said softly. "Not just for us, but for everyone. You've shown that love, understanding, and courage can change the world." Liara smiled, her heart full. "And you've shown me that it's worth taking risks for connection, for trust, and for love. Together we can face anything, challenge, fear, or the unknown. Together we can explore the stars, the universe, and ourselves." Ethan reached for her hand, holding it firmly yet gently. "Together," he said, and in that moment Liara understood the truth she had been searching for her entire life. Home was not a place defined by rules or approval. Home was the bond she shared with someone who saw her fully and loved her for who she was. Home was the courage to follow her heart, even when the universe seemed uncertain. Home was a life built on trust, understanding, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. The night passed peacefully, the colony resting under the soft light of Novara's moons. Liara and Ethan stood together, watching the stars, imagining the endless possibilities that awaited them. Their love was a bridge between species, between worlds, and between hearts. It was a testament to courage, empathy, and the enduring strength of connection. In the days that followed, Liara continued to teach, explore, and innovate. Humans thrived under her guidance, inspired not only by her knowledge but by the example of her bravery and integrity. Small groups of Elethran observers, curious about her choices, began to question their own traditions and assumptions. Slowly, change began to ripple outward, sparked by one alien who dared to embrace difference, trust, and love. Liara and Ethan built a life filled with discovery, laughter, and shared purpose. They explored the stars together, learning about distant planets, ancient civilizations, and the mysteries of the universe. They grew as partners, friends, and companions, their bond deepening with every challenge they faced. And as the moons of Nova rose each night, casting silver light across the land, Liara knew that she had found something far greater than recognition, status, or acceptance. She had found belonging. She had found love. She had found a future where the heart, curiosity, and courage could shape a life that was truly extraordinary. Liara had been rejected once, cast aside by her own kind, and left to wonder if she would ever belong. But in the embrace of understanding, trust, and love, she discovered a truth far more powerful than any judgment or tradition: that the universe rewards those who follow their hearts, who choose courage over fear, and who dare to build bridges where others see only distance. And so, beneath the shimmering light of twin moons and countless stars, Liara and Ethan stepped into their future together, hearts aligned, hands joined, and spirits united. The story of their love, their courage, and their journey would inspire generations, humans and aliens alike, to see beyond difference, to embrace connection, and to believe that even across the vast expanse of space, hearts can find each other and build a home. The universe was vast, full of mystery and wonder, but Liara had learned its most important secret: love, trust, and courage could make even the greatest distances seem small. And in that knowledge, she and Ethan faced the future, not with fear but with hope, joy, and the certainty that together they could overcome anything.